Hey everyone, welcome back. It is Icon. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. Today, rare ARCITYS point of view here as the Chicago Huntsmen are going to battle against the New York Subliners. So I will say overall that this matchup was pretty close over the course of all 5 maps. This one in particular I picked because MACK went absolutely unbelievable. I really wish that there was a point of view from MACK Melts just because I want to see how he plays. I want to see the routes that he takes. I want to see the different part of the maps that he occupies, stuff like that. But unfortunately, he only really streams 10s or Warzone gameplay. So unfortunately, we don't get to see it. But he went absolutely crazy in this one. In fact, there was a little bit of a conversation afterwards between ARCITYS and General. They were just kind of talking about certain things that MACK was doing and how he was playing. And I don't know, they were just saying that nobody should be dropping 43 kills against them. And ARCITYS made a point to say that he thinks a lot of times they're just constantly running into gunfire, which causes them to die when maybe if they just played a little bit slower in some certain scenarios that wouldn't happen. But with that, let's get that all out of the way. We are now on to P2. So first set of rotations, we're on the second hill. Chicago did have this coalition spawn, so they have the second spawn, although it looks like they are about to spawn out. That might be something that they missed there. Then they almost team nated themselves. So it doesn't happen very often, but it does appear that Chicago was able to keep that back spawn for the majority of P1. And then as soon as it broke to P2, we saw ARCITYS die up in the top hill. And now they gave up spawns for P2. And now this one, as we all know on Hackney P2, this one's almost impossible to get back inside. So the only thing that they did is they had warehouse locked down, but they weren't watching the top side of the map. And if you get 1 or 2 people to push through the top side of the map to get those top P2 spawns, then you can start working the cross and getting kills in between. Let's go ahead. Let's pause this real quick. Let's take a peek at the minimap just so that I can break that down. You guys can understand exactly what's happening. As this was rotating from P1 to P2, they were spawning back here, right? So Chicago was getting this back spawn. We saw ARCITYS up in P2, but they had people on this side of the map. So kind of the bottom side of the map down here. And while that was happening, New York had somebody, they were spawning on this side of the map, but they did have somebody push through up by forklift, up by cop car. And once you get through, as soon as you get somebody back here, as long as Chicago doesn't also have somebody in that back part of the map, then all of a sudden it kind of becomes one of those split hills, right? One team is spawning top side, one team is spawning bottom side. So normally when that happens, you start to get a lot of contested gun battles in this area. And essentially the team that can win the most gun battles in that area is the team that's going to win spawns, because at that point in time, there's going to be one team, again, spawning up top, one team spawning underneath. So whoever can win that gun battle is going to overtake P2, and that's exactly what we saw towards the end there. So as we go ahead and get back into this and press play, that's really where things went wrong, is that they just didn't have somebody posted on the top side of the map. As soon as one person gets through, everything can kind of break down from there. Now, as we're rotating back to P3, P4, and P5, it does appear that Chicago has a side of the map that they want to have, right? You want to have that back yellow location, that bottom yellow spawn, just so that once it finally does get to P5, that's the second money hill, right? Obviously, P2 is the most important hill on this map, but P5 is second. So anything you can do to get points in P3 is great. Anything you can do to contest and get points inside of P4, that is also great. But it all comes down to, can you stack what you get from P2 and P5? Normally, the team that performs best on P2 and P5 is going to be the team that ends up winning the map. So you can see that they're really holding down kind of just the mid-map and that back yellow spawn. Actually, as we were watching that there, we don't watch ARCITYS very often. So it's weird to see what other people like to do, where they like to play, where they like to post up, because I can tell you just from following Scum, from following Envoy, even following and watching Formal sometimes, I almost never see somebody up at that top graffiti wall. They just don't hang out there, right? Normally Scump and Envoy and Pristini, they're inside doing the dirty work inside the hill, but you almost, I don't know, I don't see people holding that cross from that top graffiti wall. So that's where it gets kind of interesting watching somebody that's a little bit different. as we look at the actual analysis here, when they're spawning over inside of P1, that means obviously for the last couple lives here, they did lose that back spawn for P5. So we'll see if they're going to be able to push through. We'll see where ARCITYS spawns. He spawns behind his teammate over there, kind of by forklift. So they were able to get time, at least the last 20 seconds or so, inside of P4. Unfortunately, they gave up P5. And if we look at the score on the bottom left, you can see that they're obviously not going to have the lead as we go forward from the first set of rotations. One other thing is that a lot of that comes from, if you don't have P2, like we were just talking about a minute ago, if you don't have P2 and you don't have P5, those are the two hills that you really have to stack together. If you can just split those, then it can be pretty even going through the first set, second set of rotations. But if you lose both of them, you're going to be at a pretty big deficit after the first or second set of rotations. And MACK's doing a really nice job. You just saw a little glimpse of him inside the last hill, but MACK's doing a great job of just holding down the time inside the hill. And now you can see that already New York is trying to leak out, right? The last, I don't know, probably there's like 20 seconds left in the last hardpoint, and you saw ARCITYS immediately go up towards forklift. And that's actually, let's go ahead, let's pause that. Let's bring up the mini map, because this is a source of a conversation after this map is over. You saw ARCITYS come up off of spawn, and when he instantly spawned and when he instantly went up towards forklift, he got into a battle and he got 2 kills right here. What that tells ARCITYS is that obviously nobody's watching it, but nobody was even talking about watching it. And I know that we're not listening into their team comms right now, but if you're New York and you're back here, then obviously after P5, the most important thing to do is to flip so you get spawns for P2. So that's when people start to leak out, and they had 2 already pushed up inside of forklift when ARCITYS decided to check it. And that's just a source of not communicating, right? If you don't have anybody up there, or if you're not telling your teammates to go up there, then things probably aren't going so well for you. So I just want to make sure that I pointed that out, because when this map was over, that's the first thing that ARCITYS brings up, is the fact that we should have been, we had spawns going into P2 on the second set of rotations, and we didn't even have anybody on the top side of the map watching it. So just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. But as we go back to P1, actually we're already 30 seconds into P1, as we start these second set of rotations, the best thing about scrims is that we can listen in. So I do want to turn up the volume. I want you guys to hear what they're talking about and what they're saying. It just lends a little bit more of an insight into what's happening behind the scenes. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to turn up the volume. Let's listen in to Chicago's team comms.
Flying on our door, dude.
Cap dead.
I got initial.
Our door, one shot. Our door weak. Our door weak. Our door weak.
Dead.
I see Lamar.
Another one stacks. Donnie's ticket.
Two there.
Take it there,
Take it there. Lamar middle. And
He's
our door.
absolutely dead.
Our door.
Yeah, our door.
Our door
down.
dead.
Our door dead. We rotating left.
No one, our door dead.
Door.
Guarantee this time. Guarantee this time.
Fucking nuts.
Yo, fork. He's hitting.
Dead.
Nice to win.
Gap.
I spawned tires.
Top green, Lamar.
Just real quick, if you're watching the minimap in the top left-hand corner, the last 4 people that spawn, and there's another one, the last 5 people that spawn have spawned right to the right, and there's another one, there's 6 people have spawned right to the right in the top side of the map of where ARCITYS is looking, kind of over on that right side. So what that tells is that there was still a fairly strong presence from New York inside of P1. So as soon as they eliminated that presence, then you would start spawning on the bottom side of the map. But you can see New York keeps hitting P1 over and over and over again, which is forcing Chicago to spawn on the top side of the map. So just a little bit of an insight there into where teams are pushing and where they're spawning.
He's on our
bottom green.
Our white belt.
Work together.
Bottom green.
Get
I'm
a
waiting
good
first.
push.
I'm waiting first.
Yeah,
I'm
go
waiting
for it.
first.
He top scaff on you. I'm one shot.
He'll
Killed me.
help you. He's on scaff on you.
Touch cover
Wow.
scaff.
Nice, good.
Good job. I spawned close first.
Coming up, L.
I'm just going right away. I'm going right away.
Top green.
I got him out.
Top green and on hill.
Top green dead.
Hit absolute.
One more pit top L. Pit and top L.
Got pit.
Good job. Just stay alive if you can. Stay alive if you
We're
can.
spawning first.
We spawn deep as fuck. One's graffiti.
He's hurt front on you.
I need front hill.
Shit on bad. One's mid.
Front hill.
Zumo's some mid.
Top L. Middle
Back
dead.
left,
One green, one shot,
bro.
He's in hill. He's
Yeah,
going
we
hill. One
flipped.
shot.
Held dead. Held
Good
dead.
job. We gotta play this time.
I tried staying alive. One's mid crates.
One other thing I just want to point out real quick is that it's cool to see the way that ARCITYS is playing, right? Because sometimes he'll come up, he'll have an AR. Sometimes he'll come up, he'll have an SMG. So when it was rotating back to P2, he had an AR inside the hill watching over towards Forklift, top side of the map. Now that things are getting a little bit more up and personal, he switched to an SMG. He's running an SMG because he's trying to get inside of P3, inside of P4. So it's just interesting to see how different types of players play, and we don't really see ARCITYS all that often. So let's go ahead, let's listen back in. Just want to make sure we were pointing that out.
Yeah. I spawned first, I spawned first. I can kill him all.
No! I choked that shit bad.
One is
I need their door.
One's first and one's fourth.
Tools in their door. Tools in their door.
Got
40 seconds. They can't win off this. They
Middle
can't.
Tom dead.
Need a wall for you.
on wall.
On the wall, dead. He should be dead. No, I hit him with the nade.
I choked him.
You gotta go right. Go right. Off one.
Yeah, I'm right.
Top green,
Tools, Donnie.
Top green got me. Top green got me, and one's on the wall. One's on the wall.
Dead. No one.
You just heard them say a couple times that New York can't win off of this current hill. So while it would be great to get in and contest a little bit, you can't give up spawns. And with 4 people going down right there, ARCITYS spawns up inside of P1. So the one thing that you really couldn't do, you couldn't give up spawns. If you were to get 50 seconds out of P5, second set of rotations, then it would be like a 240 to 240 ball game as you're going back to P1. They gave up spawns. Now all of a sudden they only need 10 points. And this is probably going to end up being, yeah, they're not going to get anywhere close because they spawned out all the way out on the opposite side of the map, kind of over towards P2. They spawned over towards P2 because New York was pushed up inside of green and top L. When you have that much map control, your enemy team is going to spawn completely out. So really nice job there of New York of holding down the money hills, right? First set of rotations, they had P2. They also had P5. Second set of rotations, they didn't have P2, which allowed Chicago to come back into the game. But when it came to P5, second set of rotations, also P4, they won both of those hills. So that's how you end up getting a 250 to 191 victory. Look at the scoreboard here. ARCITYS was even. Envoy was -6. A little bit weird to see that out of him because he's usually so consistent. Scump -2. Formal -10, Pristini -8, and this is exactly what ARCITYS was talking about after this was over. Seems like people might be playing so fast that they're just running into choke points and dying from other SMGs. The big key here, look down below, MACK was 43 and 18. If there's one person that stands out, obviously it's him. So great map out of him. He really did have a good series across all 5 maps, but interesting to see this. Also, you probably noticed if you've been watching scrims that they now have these 60 hertz servers. So servers will be a little bit less of a factor in who ends up winning a game. So that's always really good to see that Call of Duty is going ahead and making that change for them. But with that, guys, if you're new around here, you enjoy this sort of content, I put out brand new videos breaking down the Call of Duty League every single day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Any comments on this, make sure you leave them down below. I love your comments. I love going through, reading them, the interactions, all that stuff. Thank you guys so much. Leave a like before you head on the way. It really helps out the channel. And with that, thank you so much. I will catch you in tomorrow's upload.